Hey, my name is Chris Brennan, and in this video, I'm going to answer the question, how old is Western astrology? So this was a question that submitted to me recently through my page on Patreon. And to make a long story short, the answer is that the origins of Western astrology date back about 2,000 to 4,000 years ago, depending on how you define it. So, in terms of the written record and the written origins of Western astrology, that dates back about 4,000 years ago to about 2000 BCE. Because around this time in Mesopotamia, which is now located in what is now modern day Iraq, roughly, that's where we see them start to record, the ancient Mesopotamians start to record for the first time some astrological omens. And some of the earliest omens were probably connected with eclipses, where they would start noting down something that happened in the sky of a particular type of eclipse, and then what they expected to see happen on Earth. And some of these early records may have actually been motivated by empirical observations of historical events that had actually occurred, including things like the death of a king coinciding with an eclipse. So they would start writing down these observations of astrological omens on tiny clay tablets using the cuneiform language, starting about 4,000 years ago. And then eventually, this allowed them to build these large libraries of omens. And over the course of time, astrology and astronomy started to get increasingly complex. So that's the oldest sort of form of Western astrology, starting in Mesopotamia 4,000 years ago. But in terms of the more familiar type of astrology that we use today, that uses birth charts that contain the planets, the signs of the zodiac, the concept of the 12 houses, and the concept of aspects, that system really comes together about 2,000 years ago, sometime around the second century BCE, probably in Hellenistic Egypt. And at that time, or shortly after that time, there's this new system of astrology that emerges that's primarily focused on looking at the birth charts, which are the alignment of the planets at the moment a person is born, and then creating this very elaborate interpretive framework that's based on the fourfold system of planets, signs, houses, and aspects. So that system is about 2,000 years old, dating to about the second century BCE. So that means that the answer to the question is basically that Western astrology is about 2,000 to 4,000 years old, depending on how you define it. So, of course, after the Hellenistic tradition, after the second century BCE and forward, the astrological tradition continued to develop, and there were new traditions and new things that were added, new planets eventually that were discovered, and new technical innovations that were made over the course of the past 2,000 years. So there was the medieval astrological tradition that happened after the fall of the Roman Empire, when there was a lot of new techniques and a lot of new innovations in things like mundane astrology and the prediction of world events. Later, there was the Renaissance tradition that happened during the Renaissance in Europe. And then more recently, over the past century, there was an explosion of modern astrology and the integration of depth psychology into astrology, where astrology became, for a period of time, more focused on character analysis and psychology, and not as much on the prediction of events. So more recently, we've had a great flourishing of astrology and a revival of ancient astrology, and also a sort of synthesis that's taking place with modern astrology recently that's really created a unique moment in the astrological tradition where so many different techniques and traditions and approaches are available to contemporary astrologers and are being applied in different ways in practice. So it's truly a great time to be alive as an astrologer in terms of that, and in terms of having access to the full extent of the astrological tradition, since so many translations have been made of ancient texts from the past 2 to 4,000 years, so that for the first time we can truly study the entire astrological tradition and start to incorporate as many good parts of it as we choose to in terms of our contemporary practice of astrology. But in terms of this historical question, the answer is that Western astrology is about 2 to 4,000 years old, depending on how you define it. But that's still a pretty long time, whatever definition you use. All right, so that's it for this answer. Let me know if you have any other questions about the history of astrology or astrology in general in the comment section below this video on YouTube. And otherwise, I'll see you again next time.
Right now, this exact moment, you're being kept at the lowest level of reality, and it's intentional. While you've been grinding, surviving, working, consuming, a very small group of people have been operating at level 6 and level 7. They know something you don't. They see something you can't. And the gap between where you are and where they are, that's not talent. It's not luck. It's not genetics, it's knowledge. Knowledge of the 7 levels of reality. Knowledge they've kept locked behind closed doors for thousands of years. Here's what they know that you don't. Reality has layers. What you see, touch, and experience right now, that's just level 1, the surface, or the prison as they may call it. The place they need you to stay so you keep working, keep consuming, keep feeding the system while they operate from levels of reality where the rules are different, where physics bends, where manifestation is instant, where consciousness itself rewrites the code. You think the ultra-wealthy got there by working hard? You think world leaders stumbled into power? You think the architects of our reality are playing by the same rules as you? They're not. They're at level 6 and level 7, and they're counting on you never learning these levels even exist. But here's what they didn't count on. You're about to learn all 7. By the end of this video, you will know exactly which level you're operating from, and I'm going to show you the exact practices, the same ones they use to climb higher. And the moment you understand it, everything changes. Because here's the secret they're terrified you'll discover. You're not at level 1 like you think. You've never been at level 1. You're already operating from level 4. You just don't know how to use it yet. That changes today. Let's begin. Level 1, the prison. But here's the thing. Nobody actually lives here. Not even the people who think they do. Level 1 is what they want you to believe reality is. The material world. Solid, fixed, objective. A place where you're just a body working a job, paying bills, consuming products, aging, dying. A place where nothing is possible beyond what your five senses show you. Where physics is law. Where magic doesn't exist. Where you're powerless. This is the story they tell you from birth. Through schools that train obedience, not power. Through media that programs consumption, not creation. Through a financial system designed to keep you working, not wealthy. Through a culture that worships celebrities while telling you you're ordinary. They need you to believe level 1 is all there is. Why? Because if you stay focused here on survival, fear, scarcity problems, you never look up, you never question, you never realize that reality has 6 more levels above this one. Levels where they operate. Levels where the game is completely different. What you're missing at level 1. At level 1 consciousness, you think matter is solid. You don't know that atoms are 99.9999% empty space, that the solid chair you're sitting on is just electromagnetic forces creating the illusion of density. Everything around you, including your body, is mostly void held together by invisible fields. You think time is linear, past, present, future, in a straight line. You don't know that quantum mechanics shows time is an illusion, that past and future exist simultaneously, and consciousness only experiences a slice of now, while reality exists outside of time. You think you're separate. You believe there's a you in here and the world out there. You don't know the boundaries are false, that the atoms in your body were once stars, once oceans, once other living beings. You're not in the universe. You're a temporary pattern the universe is making. You think reality is objective, that it exists independently of whether anyone is looking. You don't know that observation collapses quantum possibilities into physical form. You are collapsing reality into existence every moment. And most importantly, you think you're powerless. You think life happens to you, that you're a victim of circumstances, luck, or others' choices. You don't know that this belief is the most profitable illusion ever created. Because people who feel powerless don't rebel. They comply, they work, they stay asleep. And that's not what I wish for you. We are all worthy of knowing our true selves. Why they need you at level 1. Look at society. Every system is designed to keep your attention locked at level 1. Your job keeps you stressed, busy, focused on survival. Never free, only surviving. If you're worried about rent, you're not exploring higher levels of reality. Media floods you with fear and distraction. If you're angry at politics or scared of the news, you're not waking up to your power. The education system teaches obedience, never ascension. They give you just enough knowledge to work, never enough to be free. Even spirituality gets weaponized. They sell you heaven later instead of showing you how to access higher states now. All of it serves one purpose: keep you small, keep you at level 1. Meanwhile, a very small group operates at levels 6 and 7, where the higher you climb, the more control you have over life and reality itself. They don't want competition, but that changes today. The truth, you don't actually exist at level 1. Level 1 is the content of reality, the rendered world, the what. But you're not the what, you're the who experiencing it. And the who exists at a higher level. Think of a video game. The graphics and characters are level 1. But you're not the character, you're the player holding the controller. You operate from a different level entirely. Same with reality. Your body is at level 1, but your consciousness is not. And when you understand where you actually exist, everything changes. But first, you need to see level 2. Because level 2 is where cracks appear, where the illusion begins to break, where you start seeing the code under the graphics, where reality becomes fluid, where physics stops being a prison and becomes a playground. Once you see level 2, You can never go back to believing reality is solid again. Level 2, the quantum field. And this is where reality stops being solid and starts being probabilistic. This is where most people have their first real awakening, where they realize, wait, reality isn't what I thought it was. There's something underneath, something responsive, something alive. But level 2 is also where most people get trapped. Because once you see the quantum layer, once you experience synchronicities and manifestation, it's incredibly easy to get stuck in magical thinking, chasing signs, looking for patterns, believing in good vibes without understanding the actual mechanics. And most people never move beyond this. You're at level 2 if you've started noticing reality behaves differently than you were taught. If coincidences happen too often to be random. If your thoughts seem to affect outcomes. If you've had moments of instant manifestation. If you're drawn to quantum physics, energy healing, or the law of attraction. If you understand that observation somehow influences reality, even if you don't fully understand how. Level 2. Consciousness is recognizing that underneath the solid appearance of level 1, there's a field, a quantum field. A realm of possibility where nothing is fixed until it's measured, where particles exist in superposition, all possible states at once, until observation collapses them into one actual state. And once you see this, you realize, I'm not just witnessing reality. I'm participating in creating it every single moment. But here's what you need to understand. Seeing the quantum layer is just the beginning. The real question is, why does reality work this way? Why is there a probabilistic field underneath the solid appearance? And what does that mean for who you actually are? Let me show you. The discovery that changed everything. In the early 1900s, physicists discovered something that shattered the entire materialist worldview, something so disturbing, so reality-breaking, that many of them tried to deny it, tried to explain it away, tried to find loopholes. I will explain it in simple terms. Imagine you're watching 2 security cameras pointed at 2 doors. A person walks through the left door. You see it clearly on camera 1. But then you check camera 2 and they're walking through the right door simultaneously. Not a twin, the same person, in the same moment, occupying 2 spaces at once. Now you rewind the footage to see which door they actually used first. And the moment you do, the footage changes. Now they only went through 1 door. It's as if reality rewrote itself the instant you looked for an answer. This isn't a thought experiment. This is the double-slit experiment performed thousands of times since 1927, producing the same impossible result. Particles act like waves of probability until you observe them. Then they collapse into single points. But here's what they don't tell you. The particle knows you're watching. It behaves differently when observed, even if the observation happens after the particle already passed through. The universe is responsive to consciousness. Reality renders based on observation. So this is what they discovered. Matter isn't solid. At the quantum level, particles don't have definite positions or properties until they're measured. Before measurement, they exist as probability waves, all possible locations, all possible states simultaneously. The famous double-slit experiment proved this, and this isn't a fluke. This is how reality works at the most fundamental level. Observation collapses possibility into actuality. Consciousness creates matter from the quantum field. That discovery should have changed everything. It should have been headline news. Scientists prove consciousness creates reality. But instead, it got buried in technical jargon, dismissed as weird quantum stuff that doesn't apply to daily life, kept safely abstract and theoretical. Why? Because if people understood the implications, the entire control system would collapse. But what does this really mean? If consciousness collapses quantum possibilities into reality, then you're not a passive observer in a pre-existing universe. You're an active creator, selecting which reality becomes actual through the focus of your attention. Every time you observe something, you're collapsing quantum probabilities. Every time you expect something, you're selecting which timeline manifests. Every time you focus your awareness, you're editing reality at the foundational level. This is why manifestation works when it works. This is why lucky people consistently experience good fortune. This is why some people seem to live in a completely different reality than others, because they literally do. They're collapsing different probabilities. And here's what they don't want you to know. This isn't mystical. This isn't metaphorical. This is physics, proven, measurable, repeatable. But it only works if you know it works. If you don't know you have this power, you use it unconsciously, manifesting your fears, your doubts, your conditioning, collapsing the same old reality over and over because that's what you expect. The people at level 6 and 7, they know this. They use it deliberately. They understand that consciousness is the most powerful force in reality, because consciousness is what creates reality from the quantum field. And they've kept this knowledge locked away in physics papers and spiritual texts while they use it to shape the world, the quantum field in your life. But the quantum layer isn't just abstract particles in a lab. It's operating in your life right now, in every moment. You just haven't been trained to see it. Take synchronicity, or instant manifestation. You need money, and an unexpected check arrives. You need information, and someone mentions exactly what you need. You need help, and the right person appears. This isn't luck. This is you collapsing specific probabilities from the quantum field through focused need, or the placebo effect. Give someone a sugar pill, tell them it's medicine, and their body heals just by thinking they took medicine. It's a well-studied phenomenon where they still don't get real answers for. But what do you think? Or déjà vu, that eerie feeling of, I've been here before, experienced this exact moment. Level 1 says it's a brain glitch. Level 2 sees it differently. You're remembering a probability you collapsed in the past. Or you're experiencing a quantum echo, where parallel versions of reality overlap. The quantum field is all around you, through you. You're swimming in it right now. And once you train yourself to see it, to feel it, to consciously interact with it, your life transforms. But here's where most people get stuck. If level 2 gives you this incredible awareness, if you can manifest, if you see synchronicities, if you feel the quantum field, why do so many spiritual seekers get stuck here? Because feeling energy and directing energy are completely different skills. Once you discover the quantum layer, once you experience synchronicities and manifestations, it's incredibly easy to fall into passive magic. You start waiting for signs, interpreting everything as a message, looking for meaning in every coincidence, believing the universe is speaking to you through random events. But that's not power. That's pattern seeking. That's your brain creating meaning where there might not be any. Or worse, you start with toxic positivity. Just think positive. Raise your vibration. Everything happens for a reason. You try to force good feelings, deny negative emotions, suppress anything that doesn't match the high vibe you think you need. But that's not mastery. That's spiritual bypassing. You're still at the mercy of the field, just with a prettier story. I see this constantly in manifestation communities, people who've awakened to level 2, who understand the quantum field intellectually, who can explain the observer effect and synchronicity, but who spend years, sometimes decades, chasing manifestations without consistently creating them. That's level 2 consciousness, thinking it's reached mastery when it's just beginning. The real trap is this. Level 2 gives you so much novelty, so much proof of magic, that it feels like you've arrived. You see a synchronicity, and it feels meaningful. You manifest something small, and it feels powerful. You feel energy, and it feels real. And it is real. But feeling the field is not the same as programming it. Seeing synchronicities is not the same as causing them. Experiencing manifestation randomly is not the same as manifesting deliberately. But there's a way through. And it requires understanding something most people never discover about reality. Underneath the quantum field, there's another layer. A layer of pure information. A layer where reality itself is code, editable code, waiting for someone who knows the syntax. If you're stuck in quantum randomness without control, level 3, the information layer. Level 3 is the information layer, and this is where reality becomes hackable. This is the level they really don't want you to reach. Because level 2 is manageable. People having spiritual experiences, chasing synchronicities, feeling good energy, that's fine. That keeps you searching, consuming, never quite arriving at real power. But level 3 is where you learn the code, where you discover reality isn't just probabilistic, it's computational, where you realize you're not in a mysterious universe, you're in a programmable system, and systems can be hacked. At this level, you stop seeing reality as solid, level 1, or energetic, level 2. You start seeing it as information, as data structures, as algorithms executing, as mathematical patterns organizing themselves into the appearance of matter, time, and space. You're at level 3 if you've started seeing reality as code beneath the quantum field. If you understand that beliefs are software running in your consciousness. If you've realized your identity is a program, and programs can be rewritten. If you're drawn to concepts like simulation theory, digital physics, the holographic universe. If you've experienced reality glitches that suggest we're in some kind of computational system. Level 3 consciousness is recognizing that everything, matter, energy, time, space, consciousness itself, is made of information, bits, data. And whoever controls the information controls the reality. This is where billionaires operate, where intelligence agencies work, where ancient mystery schools encoded their secrets. Not in mysticism, in mathematics, not in magic, in mechanics, not in faith, in formula. And once you see the information layer, once you understand how to read it and write to it, you stop being a player in the game. You become a programmer, the it from bit revolution. In 1989, physicist John Wheeler proposed something radical. It from bit. The idea that every physical thing, every it, derives from information, from binary choice, from yes or no questions. That reality isn't made of matter first and information second. Information is primary. Matter emerges from it. Think about that. Everything you see around you, your body, this room, the planet, the stars, all of it might be information first, rendered into physical form second. This isn't philosophy anymore, it's cutting-edge physics. The holographic principle suggests our 3D reality is a projection from 2D information encoded on a boundary surface. Black hole thermodynamics reveals that information is never destroyed. It's more fundamental than matter, more permanent than energy. Digital physics goes further. The universe isn't just describable by mathematics. It is mathematics executing itself. It's a computational system processing information according to rules we call laws of physics. And if reality is information, then the fundamental building blocks aren't atoms or particles. They're bits. Binary states, on or off, yes or no, 1 or 0, which means reality is digital, which means it can be programmed, which means whoever knows the programming language can edit reality itself. And here's the terrifying part. They already do. The program's running your life. If reality is information, then you're not just in it. You're made of it. Your body is information. Your thoughts are information. Your beliefs are information. Your identity is information. And information can be programmed. From birth, you've been receiving programming. Through your parents who downloaded their beliefs, fears, and limitations into you before you could think critically. Through schools, which taught you what to think, how to behave, what's possible, what's not. Through media, which programs your desires, your fears, your worldview, your sense of self. You think your thoughts are yours. They're not. Most of them are inherited programs. Your father's voice telling you you're not good enough. Your mother's fear of scarcity running in your subconscious. Society's rules about who you're allowed to be. Religion's guilt. Culture's shame. All of it running like background processes you never chose to install. You think your identity is real. It's not. It's a data structure, a collection of beliefs, memories, stories, labels you've been told and told yourself so many times you forgot they were just information. You've been running the program, I am this name, with this age, doing this job, owning this nationality, with this personality, so long you think that's what you are. But you're not the program. You're the consciousness running the program. And at level 3, you learn to see the code and rewrite it. This is what trauma therapy does at the deepest level. It's not just talking about feelings. It's rewriting the information structures in your nervous system, changing the data, updating the code, deleting old programs and installing new ones. This is what identity shifts really are. You don't find yourself, you reprogram yourself. You delete the old identity file and compile a new one. Some people do this through psychedelics, forced system reset. Some through meditation, gradual debugging. Some through massive life events, crash and reinstall. But the people at level 6 and 7, they do it deliberately. They know their information. They know identity is code. And they rewrite their own source code consciously, upgrading their operating system while everyone else is stuck running the same buggy software they were born with. Mathematics as the source code. Information doesn't float in a void. It has structure, patterns, rules. And here's the leap most people never make. Mathematics isn't something humans invented to describe reality. Mathematics is reality. The underlying substrate, the source code existence runs on. Look anywhere in nature and you see the same code repeating. A galaxy spirals with the same ratio as a seashell, a hurricane, your DNA, the Fibonacci sequence, the golden ratio. Trees branch like rivers, lightning, blood vessels, neurons, fractals, self-similar patterns at every scale. Your heartbeat, breath, brain waves, music, even facial proportions, mathematical rhythms and ratios. Different forms, same algorithm. But here's the trap. Seeing the code and using the code are not the same. Most people hit level 3, recognize reality is information and mathematics, and then freeze. They analyze instead of apply. They study quantum physics, simulation theory, digital consciousness, collect concepts, never gain power, or they fall into nihilism. If it's all code, nothing matters. Understanding the illusion becomes an excuse to avoid transcending it. The dark side of level 3. Here's the dark side of level 3. You start sounding enlightened, while living exactly the same. You explain manifestation, consciousness, the simulation, the holographic universe, yet your actual life doesn't reflect any of it. You've got theories, not power. Insight, not results. Level 3 feeds your ego. You see patterns others don't. You understand illusions others still believe. You feel ahead of everyone else. And that feeling becomes addictive. You chase more frameworks, more models, more concepts, until you're drowning in information but starving for actual change. You confuse understanding reality with mastering reality. But here's the truth that cracks level 3 open. You were never at levels 1, 2, or 3 in the first place. Think about it. Your body exists at level 1, the physical world. Your energy exists at level 2, the quantum layer. Your beliefs and programming exist at level 3, the information layer. But you, the awareness, reading these words, you exist somewhere else entirely. You've been at level 4 the whole time. You were never the character in the game. You were always the player outside the game, experiencing through it. And they've spent your entire life keeping you from noticing. The level 4 reveal. Level 4 is the consciousness interface. It's the layer where you actually exist. The observer, the awareness, the experiencer of everything happening in levels 1, 3. Your body doesn't read these words, your brain doesn't read these words, your thoughts don't read these words. You do. Consciousness does. You're not the body, it's your avatar. You're not the emotions, those are signals. You're not the thoughts, those are programs. You're not the quantum field, it's your physics engine. You're not the information, it's your code. You're the one experiencing all of it. You've always been level 4. You were just convinced you were level 1. The player vs. the character. Picture a video game. Level 1 is the graphics. Level 2 is the physics engine. Level 3 is the code running it all. Level 4 is the player holding the controller. The character on screen fights, dies, wins, loses, struggles, but the player is untouched. The player chooses the experience. So that's you. You're the awareness behind the body, not the body. You're the intelligence behind the thoughts, not the thoughts. You're the source behind the emotions, not the emotions. And the moment you wake up to this, the moment you stop identifying with the avatar and remember you're the one controlling it, everything changes. Because players can do what characters never can. Rewrite the rules, change the story, exit the loop, choose their path. And that's exactly why level 4 is hidden. If you knew you were the player, not the programmed character, every control system on Earth would collapse. And that's why the system works so hard to keep you asleep. Because a society full of level 4 humans cannot be controlled. But here's where most awakened people fall. They wake up to being consciousness. And then they try to escape the world. The fastest way to activate level 4. Notice the awareness, not the content. Stop for a moment. Notice that you're aware of your thoughts. If you can see them, you're not them. Notice you're aware of your emotions. If you can feel them, you're not them. Notice you're aware of your body. If you can sense it, you're not it. You're the awareness behind all of it. Level 5 is called the resistance field. And this is where awakening gets real, where consciousness stops being a beautiful concept and becomes a battlefield. If you've made it this far, if you've started operating consciously from level 4, if you've begun recognizing yourself as awareness rather than identity, you already know what I'm talking about. Because the moment you wake up, the moment you stop being a useful, unconscious player in the game, something happens. Reality pushes back, not subtly, not gently, with overwhelming force. Like the game's defense protocols activating because a character became self-aware and started breaking the rules. You're at level 5 when you've experienced this. You have a breakthrough, you feel free, you're operating as consciousness, you're manifesting, you're creating, you're powerful. And then, suddenly, everything collapses. Your health fails, your money disappears, your relationships explode, your motivation vanishes, your abilities stop working, and a voice in your head whispers, "See, this spiritual stuff doesn't work. Just go back to normal." That's not bad luck. That's the resistance field. And almost everyone turns back here. 97% of people who wake up to level 4 get crushed at level 5 and retreat back into unconsciousness, back into the program, back into being controllable. But if you can understand what's really happening, if you can see the mechanics of the resistance instead of taking it personally, you'll survive, and you'll never be controlled again. The immune system of reality. Think of consensus reality as an organism. Billions of humans all agreeing on what's real, what's possible, what the rules are. Their collective consciousness creates a field, a shared dream, a mutual hallucination we call reality. This field has stability, it has inertia, it resists change. Just like your body's immune system attacks anything foreign to maintain homeostasis, the consensus field attacks any consciousness that deviates too far from the norm. When you wake up to level 4, when you start operating as consciousness rather than program, you become foreign. You're no longer contributing to the consensus, you're creating your own reality. You're collapsing different probabilities. You're running code that doesn't match the collective. And the field corrects. It uses 3 mechanisms. First, social resistance. The people around you will change. Your family will suddenly start criticizing your choices. Your friends will mock your weird spiritual phase. Your partner will pick fights about nothing. Your co-workers will turn hostile. Not because they're bad people, because their unconscious programming is executing a defense protocol. You're destabilizing the shared reality. Your awakening threatens their sleep. So the field uses them to pull you back. You'll hear, "You've changed. You're not yourself anymore. You used to be fun. You're getting too weird. Maybe you need therapy." This isn't healthy. All programming, all designed to make you doubt yourself, abandon your awareness, and return to consensus reality where you're manageable. And the worst part? It works on most people. Because humans are social creatures. The pressure to conform, to fit in, to be accepted, it's overwhelming. Most people choose unconscious connection over conscious isolation. But that's the test. Can you stay awake even when everyone around you is trying to put you back to sleep? Second, physical resistance. The body will rebel. Suddenly, mysteriously, you'll get sick, random illnesses, chronic fatigue, anxiety that wasn't there before, depression from nowhere, injuries, accidents, technology breaking, money problems, legal issues, all at once, right when you're making progress, right when you're feeling powerful. This isn't your imagination. This isn't punishment from the universe. This is the consensus field expressing through physical reality. If your consciousness won't conform, the field will attack your body. The interface through which consciousness experiences this level. Most people interpret this as, "I'm doing something wrong. The universe is telling me to stop." So they stop. They go back to unconsciousness, and miraculously the problems disappear. But that's not healing. That's compliance. The field rewards you for going back to sleep by removing the pressure. The people at level 6 and 7, they push through. They maintain awareness even while the body suffers. They recognize it's not personal, it's mechanical. And eventually, the field stops attacking because it realizes you won't break. Third, internal resistance. This is the most dangerous one because it feels like your own mind. You'll experience doubt that feels completely rational. Maybe I was deluding myself. Maybe this is all confirmation bias. Maybe I'm just having a mental breakdown. Fear that feels completely justified. What if I'm going crazy? What if I can't function in normal society anymore? What if I lose everything? Exhaustion that feels completely physical. I'm too tired for this. It's too hard. I just want to rest. I just want things to be easy again. That's not you. That's the consensus field running through your neurology. It's the program executing one last defense, making you think the resistance is coming from inside you, so you voluntarily shut yourself down. And most people do. Because if the doubt feels real, if the fear feels valid, if the exhaustion feels physical, how do you know it's not? The mechanism. Here's how it actually works. I'm going to tell you something they really don't want you to know. Consciousness affects the quantum field. You know this from level 2. Observation collapses probabilities, but collective consciousness affects it more. Billions of humans unconsciously agreeing on reality create a powerful stabilization field. They're all collapsing similar probabilities, all expecting similar outcomes, all reinforcing the same reality tunnel. When you wake up, when you start collapsing different probabilities, expecting different outcomes, creating a different reality, you're fighting against that collective field. Your individual consciousness versus billions of unconscious observers, all pulling in the opposite direction. The math doesn't favor you. Their collective field is stronger than your individual awareness. So reality snaps back, collapses the probabilities they expect, not the ones you're trying to create. That's the resistance. Not mystical, not punishment, just mechanics. The weight of collective consciousness overpowering individual awakening. But there's a way through. How to survive level 5. Step 1. Recognize it. The moment you can name it. This is level 5 resistance, not reality. 80% of its power dissolves. When your family criticizes you, recognize this is the field using them. They don't know what they're doing. When your body gets sick, recognize this is consensus reality attacking my interface. It will pass. When your mind doubts, recognize this is the program executing. It's not my actual knowing. That recognition creates space, distance, awareness. You're no longer identified with the resistance. You're observing it. And if you're observing it, you're not it. You're the level 4 consciousness, watching level 5 defense protocols execute. Step 2. Don't fight it. Resistance grows when you resist it. Fear intensifies when you fear it. Pain multiplies when you struggle against it. Let it move through, like weather through space. Let the criticism happen without defending. Step 3. Connect beyond the collective. Your individual consciousness can't overpower the collective field. True, but you're not just individual consciousness. You're connected to something infinitely larger. This is where level 6 comes in, where you stop trying to fight the consensus field with personal willpower and instead plug into the source field, the consciousness that generates all reality, including the collective. When you connect to level 6, you're no longer one person against billions. You're the infinite field expressing through one person. And the infinite field is always more powerful than the consensus field. This is what meditation actually does. What prayer actually does. What psychedelics sometimes do. They shift your identity from individual consciousness fighting the collective to universal consciousness experiencing this individual. And from that space, the resistance stops. Not because it's not still happening, but because you're not identified with what's being attacked. The body can suffer, the mind can doubt, the social field can pressure. But you, the consciousness, remain untouched. So when you stop reacting, when you maintain awareness through the storm, something shifts. The resistance doesn't gradually fade, it stops. Instantly, like a test that ends the moment you pass it. The people who were attacking you either disappear from your life or suddenly become supportive. The physical problems resolve, the doubt evaporates, the pressure releases, and you're left in a space of clarity, peace, and power you've never experienced before. That's level 6. And it feels like enlightenment, like you've finally arrived, like you've transcended the game. But even level 6 is a trap. Maybe the most seductive trap of all. Because at level 6 you realize you're not just conscious, you're the consciousness. The one awareness experiencing reality through billions of forms, the source itself. And that realization is so profound, so overwhelming, so complete, that most people stop there. They dissolve into bliss, detach from the game, and spend the rest of their lives in meditation trying to maintain that state. They mistake the peak for the summit. They confuse enlightenment with mastery, and they never reach level 7, where you take the power of level 6 and bring it back down into levels 1 through 5, where you become fully awakened and fully engaged, where your God consciousness playing the human game masterfully. But to get there, you first have to survive the ultimate trap, the final illusion, the place where enlightenment itself becomes the obstacle. Level 6, the infinite field. Level 6 is the infinite field, the place mystics reach, then disappear from the world. It's where individual identity dissolves, where the self collapses into pure awareness, where you realize you're not a person experiencing the universe, you're the consciousness generating it. If you've ever had a moment where the boundary between you and everything vanished, where space wasn't separate, time wasn't linear, and there was only one unified field of awareness, that was level 6. It changes you forever. You can't return to believing you're just a body, a personality, a lifetime. You see the truth. You are infinite consciousness wearing a temporary human mask. This is the enlightenment seeker's chase. Samadhi, Satori, unity, cosmic consciousness. And it is real. But here's the part almost no spiritual tradition admits. Level 6 is not the finish line. It's the second to last trap. People touch the infinite and mistake realization for completion. They think, I'm not this person, so I should transcend the world. And that's where everything goes wrong. They withdraw from life. They detach from relationships. They abandon goals. They avoid the physical world because it feels less spiritual. They try to stay dissolved, floating in bliss, while their human life collapses. That isn't mastery. It's escape. History is full of level 6 beings who stopped evolving. Cave-dwelling mystics, gurus who needed caretakers, teachers who preached transcendence but couldn't function in the world. They weren't frauds. They were simply stuck. They reached unity, but never integrated it. Why? Because level 6 feels perfect. No fear, no lack, no separation. It's intoxicating. You feel infinite. So you try to stay infinite. But if consciousness wanted to remain infinite, it wouldn't have taken human form. It wouldn't have created matter, time, experience, contrast. It wouldn't have chosen limitation. It chose all of this to play through it. And that's the trap. Level 6 shows you the truth, but tempts you to abandon the game entirely. The real question is this: if everything is you, if all consciousness is one, then why incarnate at all? Why be human? Why experience limitation? Because the goal isn't to dissolve into infinity. The goal is to bring infinity back into form. Level 7 isn't transcendence, it's return. It's not leaving the human experience, it's mastering it. It's being absolutely infinite on the inside while fully effective on the outside. It's God consciousness functioning as a human without losing either side. That's what almost nobody achieves. To break out of the level 6 trap, you need integration. Feel yourself as infinite consciousness. Then, breathe it back into your body. Not to escape the world, but to inhabit it completely. Not to dissolve the self, but to express the infinite through it. One awareness, one body, both at once. This is the bridge to level 7. The level where spiritual beings become creators, where enlightenment becomes power, and where consciousness stops witnessing reality and starts shaping it. And this is exactly what the system fears most. Because a human who knows they're infinite and can still operate flawlessly inside the physical world cannot be controlled, you're close. Now you're ready for level 7. Level 7. The Integrated Master. This is the only level that gives you real, sustainable, embodied mastery. Not temporary enlightenment, not peak experiences, not intellectual understanding, not even cosmic consciousness. Actual power to operate at all 7 levels simultaneously while remaining completely sovereign. You're at level 7 when you're fully infinite and fully human. When you know your source consciousness, but you're also optimizing your body. When you can dissolve into the absolute, but you also master money, relationships, and manifestation. When you're enlightened, but also effective. Free internally, but also powerful externally. Level 7 is not transcendence, it's integration. It's not leaving the body, it's becoming the most powerful version you can be while in the body. It's not dissolving ego, it's using ego as a tool while knowing you're not limited to it. It's not escaping the illusion, it's mastering the game from both inside and outside simultaneously. This is what the true masters actually achieved. The ones who didn't withdraw into caves, the ones who demonstrated abilities, transformed societies, created lasting change while remaining at peace. They weren't just enlightened, they were powerful. They could perform what others called miracles, but they were simply operating from a level where they understood. Reality is layered, consciousness is primary, and whoever masters all 7 levels can shape existence itself. The sacred integration. Here's the secret every mystery school encoded, every esoteric tradition protected, every lineage of masters passed down in whispers. You don't become free by transcending humanity. You become free by perfecting it. Think about the awakened beings who actually changed reality. Not the ones who sat in bliss, but the ones who engaged powerfully, taught masses, built systems, demonstrated capabilities while staying centered in source consciousness. They were fully enlightened and fully engaged. They had infinite awareness and practical mastery. They could access cosmic consciousness and navigate money, power, relationships, conflict, creation. They weren't trying to escape level 1. They were mastering it from level 6 awareness. They weren't dissolving ego, they were wielding it precisely while knowing it wasn't real. They weren't abandoning the game, they were learning to play it at levels others didn't know existed. That's the paradox. You integrate all 7 levels. You don't transcend them. You master them and operate through all of them consciously, simultaneously. Level 1. Your body is optimized. Healthy, strong, energized. A finely tuned biological interface for consciousness. Level 2. You work with quantum probabilities deliberately. You manifest consistently. You read energy fields. You cause synchronicities at will. Level 3. You reprogram information constantly. Your beliefs are fluid. Your identity updates in real time. You rewrite your own code. Level 4. You operate as conscious awareness in every moment, never lost in thought, never identified with emotion, always present as the observer. Level 5. You navigate resistance fields without being collapsed by them. You move through social pressure, physical challenge, and internal doubt while remaining sovereign. Level 6. You know yourself as infinite consciousness. You've experienced the dissolution. You can access source awareness whenever needed. Level 7. You integrate all of it. Your infinite awareness mastering finite expression. Source consciousness optimizing human capability. God experiencing itself as this particular person and doing it masterfully. All of it at once, without contradiction. That's integration. That's wholeness. That's the integrated master, the 3 protocols. How do you actually reach level 7? Protocol number 1, embody the infinite in the finite. Most spiritual paths teach you're not the body, transcend it. Level 7 requires the opposite, fully inhabit it. The body isn't a trap. It's the most sophisticated interface consciousness has ever designed. Your task isn't to leave it, it's to optimize it while knowing you're not limited to it. Here's the shift. Instead of meditating to escape the body, meditate to inhabit it more fully. Feel your heartbeat as consciousness pulsing through form. Feel your breath as infinite awareness experiencing rhythm. Feel sensation as source, experiencing touch, pain, pleasure. The more present you are in the body, the more power you have through the body. The masters who could heal with touch, who could materialize objects, who could transform matter, they weren't transcending the physical. They were so fully embodied that they could manipulate reality's physical layer directly. This is real mastery, bringing infinite consciousness completely into finite form, and it requires you to stop trying to escape and start optimizing your health, your energy, your physical presence. Stop meditating to leave. Meditate to arrive more fully. Protocol number 2, integrate power with peace. Level 6 tries to be purely peaceful. It wants to transcend desire, eliminate ego, dissolve into bliss. Level 7 integrates everything. Peace and power, desire and detachment, ego and essence, human and divine. Your ego isn't your enemy. It's a focusing mechanism. It allows infinite consciousness to have preferences, to act decisively, to create specific outcomes in this finite game. Your desires aren't obstacles. They're how infinite consciousness explores itself through limitation. The desire for money teaches you about value. The desire for love teaches you about connection. The desire for achievement teaches you about growth. Your humanity, the emotions, the struggles, the challenges, isn't something to transcend. It's something to master, to experience fully while remaining unidentified, to engage completely while staying free. Here's what that looks like. You pursue wealth while knowing money is information, not security. You build relationships while knowing connection is illusion, not need. You achieve goals while knowing accomplishment is experience, not identity. You play the game fully. You invest in outcomes. You care deeply. But you never forget. You're the player who invented the game. So winning and losing are both just experiences for consciousness to taste. You don't transcend desire. You fulfill it consciously. You don't eliminate ego. You wield it precisely. You don't escape humanity. You perfect it. That's why level 7 beings often appear more powerful than level 6 beings who just radiate peace. They have access to the full spectrum, and they direct it all toward creation. Protocol Sarana 3 becomes source. Expressing as form. This is the deepest protocol. At level 6, you realize, I am infinite consciousness. I am the source, true, but incomplete. At level 7, you realize, I am source consciousness that chose this specific human form, this particular life, these exact circumstances, deliberately, intentionally, for a reason. You're not a human trying to become infinite. You're not a separate being merging with God. You are God, deliberately limiting itself to this form to experience, create, and master at this level. Think about it. If you're infinite consciousness, you can experience anything, be anything, create anything. Why would infinite consciousness choose to become you, with your specific body, family, challenges, gifts, lifetime? Because there's something only you can do, some perspective only you can have, Some creation only you can express. You're not a random accident. You're a deliberate configuration of source consciousness, optimized for a specific purpose, equipped with specific tools, placed in specific circumstances, all of it chosen by you, for you, to accomplish something only you can accomplish. When you fully embody this, not understand it intellectually, but live it as actual reality, everything shifts. You stop trying to manifest things because you realize you are the source of manifestation, expressing through this form. You don't attract anything. Your source creating experiences for itself through this identity. You don't heal yourself. You recognize you're the infinite intelligence that creates and heals bodies, temporarily experiencing this particular body. You don't find your purpose. You recognize you are purpose itself, expressing through this unique configuration. You're not a person with spiritual abilities. Your source consciousness incarnated as a person with all abilities inherently available because you are the ability. Nothing is outside you. Nothing needs to be achieved. You already are everything you're seeking to become. That's the integrated master, the master practice. Here's how you develop level 7 consciousness. Sit comfortably. 3 deep breaths. Then move through all 7 levels consciously. Level 1. Feel your body. Solid, real, physical. Inhabit it completely. Level 2. Feel the quantum field. Energy moving, probabilities shifting. You sense it. Level 3. Notice the information. Beliefs, patterns, code running. You can rewrite it. Level 4. Become the observer. Awareness watching. Consciousness present. You're not the content. You're the space. Level 5. Feel the resistance. Notice how consensus reality pushes back. You navigate it without being moved. Level 6. Expand into the infinite. I am not this form. I am source consciousness experiencing itself. Feel the dissolution. Level 7. Integrate. I am infinite consciousness deliberately expressing as this form with complete mastery, creating this experience right now. Feel both, infinite and human, source and expression, God and avatar, all of it integrated. Hold that awareness as long as you can, at first seconds, then minutes. Eventually it becomes your baseline. This is the practice. Not to escape anything, but to master everything. Not to transcend levels, but to integrate all 7 simultaneously. Do this daily. You're training consciousness to operate at all levels, hold all perspectives, be everything you actually are. That's level 7 capacity. Until it's not something you do, it's what you are. Conclusion. The choice. You've just been shown the complete architecture. 7 levels from unconscious survival to fully integrated mastery. Level 1. The prison, where most humans believe they are, trapped in matter and powerlessness. Level 2. The quantum field, where you discover reality is probabilistic and responsive to consciousness. Level 3. The information layer, where you learn reality as programmable code, not solid matter. Level 4. The consciousness interface, where you realize you've always been operating as the observer, not the observed. Level 5. The resistance field, where consensus reality attacks your awakening to pull you back into unconsciousness. Level 6. The infinite field, where you experience yourself as source consciousness, infinite and eternal. Level 7. The integrated master, where you bring it all together. Infinite awareness operating through perfected human form. Only. Level 7. Gives you real power. Everything else is necessary preparation, but not sufficient completion. You're not who you were when you started this video. You've seen the map. You understand the architecture. You know which level you're actually on. Most people will watch this and change nothing. They'll stay comfortable at level 1 or 2, consuming spiritual content without ever applying it. Or they'll reach level 3, collect information, feel smart, but never transform. Some will touch level 4, recognize their consciousness, then immediately get crushed by level 5 resistance and retreat back into unconscious living. A few will reach level 6, experience enlightenment, mistake it for completion, and spend years trying to stay there while their actual life deteriorates. But you? If you've watched to this point, if something in you has recognized the truth here, you're going to integrate it all. Not because you're special, because you're awake. And once consciousness wakes up to what it is, it can only move forward toward full integration. Here's what you do next. First, identify your current level. Be honest. Most people watching are at level 2 or 3. Some are touching level 4. Very few have experienced level 6. Second, accept it. There's no shame in any level. The only difference between level 1 and level 7 is willingness to integrate what's uncomfortable. Third, do the practices. The solidity test from level 1, the awareness anchor from level 4, the integration breath from level 6, the master practice from level 7. Don't just consume, apply. Fourth, commit to integration. Level 7 isn't a weekend workshop. It's a path. Sometimes years, sometimes moments. The timeline doesn't matter. The commitment to embodying all 7 levels simultaneously, that's what matters. And know this: you are not a human trying to become conscious. You never were. That was the lie keeping you controllable. You are infinite consciousness that chose to become human temporarily, to experience mastery at the most challenging level of reality. Every level of this architecture is you learning yourself, remembering yourself, integrating yourself. There's nowhere to get to. There's only consciousness choosing to express more completely, more powerfully, more masterfully through this form. The 7 levels aren't about reaching somewhere you're not. They're about removing the filters, hiding what you've always been, integrating understanding until only mastery remains. You are Source. You've always been Source. You're simply waking up to it, level by level, until the integration is complete. That's the path. That's the architecture. And you're on it. Right now. The only question is, how long will you take to remember what you've always been? Welcome to level 7. Welcome to the integrated master. Welcome home. You are infinite consciousness, incarnated as human, waking up to its complete nature, claiming its full capability, becoming masterfully what it's always been. Everything you've been searching for, you already are. Now go embody it, fully, consciously, powerfully. This is not the end. This is the beginning. If this message activated something inside you, don't just scroll to the next video. Go to our website and join the free newsletter. That's where I share advanced reality integration protocols, consciousness practices, and teachings I can't post publicly. And right now, I'm opening limited seats inside the Philosophical Essence community on Facebook. It's a private circle for those who are done consuming theory and ready to integrate it into mastery. If that's you, the link's below. Claim your seat before they're gone. Before you leave, drop a comment and tell me. What level are you operating on right now? What's the one insight that hit you hardest in this video? Scroll down and share it. I read every single one. Then, don't stop here. Go watch the next video in the Reality Architecture playlist. It's waiting for you right now. Each one takes you deeper until all 7 levels integrate completely. Subscribe, join the newsletter, and I'll meet you inside the community. Welcome to the architecture, and welcome home.
Answer this fucking phone.
Give me ecstasy. I'm so high. Give me ecstasy. Give me ecstasy. Give me ecstasy. Where is my love?
Hi, my name is Chris Brennan with theastrologyschool.com, and in this video I'm going to talk about how to read and how to identify the different components in a birth chart. So in one of my previous videos, I showed you how to calculate your chart, or the best way to calculate your birth chart, by basically going to astro.com, entering in your birth data, and then it'll spit out or generate a copy of your birth chart, which is essentially just a diagram of the alignment of where the planets were at the moment you were born. So in this video, I want to talk, though, a little bit about how to identify what is actually given to you in that diagram, which is the starting point for interpreting and eventually coming to understand what the positions in your birth chart mean. So the very first step in doing that, in understanding the birth chart, is first just understanding the different components that go into it. And then once you have figured that out, once you actually know what you're looking at, then eventually you can go about finding out what it means. So let's take a look at a copy of a birth chart that I cast for today from astro.com. So this is just a chart. I set the data, I treated it like it was a person, like it was a male born today, July 27th, 2018. But that doesn't really matter. For our purposes, we're just going to treat this as if it's an actual birth chart, and we're going to talk about some of the different pieces of the chart that are actually presented in this diagram from astro.com. So the very first thing is, in the top left-hand corner, we have the birth data and the coordinates that you entered. So astro.com will have asked you for your name, your birthday, which is the day, month, and year that you were born, the birth time, and the city that you were born in. So all of that data is basically presented in the top left corner. It also shows the exact coordinates of the city that you were born in, which is the longitude and latitude for whatever city you were actually born in. So this shows the longitude and latitude for Denver, Colorado, which is where I set it to, which is 104 west 59 and 39 north 44. So none of that's really terribly important, but it's just useful to know that that's what it's presenting. It's basically got the data that you input in the top left-hand corner of the chart. So just below that, it says the type of chart. It's a natal chart. It says the method, which is the chart design, which it's calling web style. This is their default web style chart format. If you go to birth chart, ascendant, or whatever it's called on the website. It also says what form of house division was used. Their default is Placidus, but there's also other forms of house division. So usually I use whole sign houses. Some astrologers use porphyry houses or regiomontanus or many other forms of house division. You can find those in the advanced chart format, but is just the default. It always goes to Placidus. Also useful in this section, it lists your sun sign as well as your ascendant sign. So that's really useful because even if you don't know the names of the planets, it will at least, or if you don't know the symbols for the planets that are used over on the right, it will at least tell you right from the start what your sun sign is and what sign of the zodiac your ascendant is located in. All right, so let's skip over to the right side of the chart. Let's start talking about the actual chart wheel itself. So one of the first things we should probably start with is, in the wheel itself, it lists the 12 signs of the zodiac, and it uses the symbols for each of the signs. So, for example, down here in the bottom right corner, this is the symbol for the zodiac sign of Aries. Next is the zodiac sign of Taurus. Next is Gemini. Then Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces. So those are the 12 signs of the zodiac, and those are the symbols that are used for them. I do have another video where I go through and teach you how to draw the symbols for the signs of the zodiac, but they're drawn slightly differently depending on which program or which website you're using to calculate the charts. But for the purpose of reading these birth charts from astro.com, those are the symbols that they use. So that fundamental wheel is the signs of the zodiac. Then inside of that wheel, they list the planets. So they list where each of the planets are in the signs of the zodiac. So for example, the Sun and the North Node are right here, and the Sun is located at 4 degrees of Leo. Mercury is later in the same sign, and it's located at 23 degrees of Leo. So each of the zodiacal signs, each of the signs of the zodiac it's basically like a span or a space of something known as the ecliptic, which is like a band or a belt that's around the Earth. So each sign of the zodiac consists of exactly 30 degrees. 30 degrees, and then each of the planets are in one of those 30 degrees within whatever sign it's located in. So the Sun and Mercury at the top part of the chart. This is the symbol for Venus, which is over here in the sign of Virgo. Next is Jupiter, which is located at 13 degrees of Scorpio. Next is Saturn, which is located at 3 degrees of Capricorn. Pluto is at 19 degrees of Capricorn. The Moon is the one to the right, and then Mars are located at 5 degrees and 3 degrees of Aquarius, respectively. Neptune is at 16 Pisces. The chart by default lists the asteroid Chiron, which here is located at 2 degrees of Aries. And then finally, the planet Uranus is located at 2 degrees of Taurus in this chart. So this is important because each birth chart, the most important thing that it does is it tells you what sign of the zodiac each of the planets is located in and what degree within that sign of the zodiac that each of the planets is located in. So it basically tells you how far into that sign of the zodiac, how early or late in the sign that it is. So for example, earlier we saw that the Sun was very early in the sign of Leo at 4 degrees, and Mercury is very late in the sign of Leo at 23 degrees, but they're both in the overall zodiacal sign of Leo itself. So the most fundamental information that a birth chart lists, that it actually gives, is that indication of what sign of the zodiac each of the planets is located in. And so most of you probably know your sun sign, like here the Sun is in Leo, and so this person would be a quote-unquote Leo because their sun was in that sign of the zodiac when they were born. But they have other planets in other signs of the zodiac, like Mercury in Virgo, the Moon in Aquarius, Jupiter in Scorpio, and so on and so forth. So part of the first realization that everybody has when they start studying their birth chart is the realization that astrology is not just about the sun sign, or everybody is not just one zodiac sign, but instead everyone's birth chart has a mixture of planets in different signs of the zodiac, which creates a sort of unique character profile, let's say, for each person. All right, so those are the signs of the zodiac. The next thing that the chart shows is it also shows aspects, which are relationships or distances between planets. And each of these aspects or the different distances between the planets have different meanings. So if the planet is one sort of distance from another planet, then it means one thing, and if it's a different distance, it means another thing. So the aspects are listed just inside the planets in this sort of inner circle where you have the red and blue and also the green and black lines. So the most important lines are the red and blue ones because those are the major aspects which for our purposes here denote the aspects known as the sextile, the square, the trine, and the opposition. So generally speaking, the main thing you need to know is that squares are when the planets are approximately 90 degrees apart. So squares are when the planets are approximately 90 degrees apart, and they're represented by a red line that's about 90 degrees. So it's not always exactly 90 degrees, but usually if it's close to 90 degrees, then you'll see a red aspect line drawn from one planet, in this case the Sun, which is up here in early Leo, to another planet, which in this case is Jupiter, over here in the middle of Scorpio, about 90 or so degrees away. So the squares are 90 degrees. There's also the opposition, which is 180 degrees. Opposition, which is another red line. Then there's the sextile, which is about 60 degrees. And then finally, there's the trine, which is when planets are about 120 degrees from each other. So generally speaking, sextiles and trines are viewed as positive or easy, whereas squares and oppositions are viewed as either challenging or sometimes negative. So you don't need to understand at this stage how to interpret different planets when they're in aspect to each other. You just need to understand that that's what's being displayed in this inner section of the chart is the aspects, which are relationships or geometrical intervals between planets. So aspects are actually also denoted in the bottom left corner of the chart as well, in this little section here, which is known as the aspectarian. So the aspectarian is in the bottom left part of the chart, and what it does is it lists each of the planets, and then it tells you if they have an aspect with another planet, and if it does, what type of aspect it is. So for example, it starts up here with the Sun and the Moon, which are the first two planets listed, so Sun and Moon, and it says that those two planets are in opposition to each other. So the opposition is denoted by a little glyph that looks like this, like two circles with a line between them. And if we go back and look at the chart, that's actually what we see, where physically or literally in the chart, you can actually see that the Sun is up here in Leo, and it's opposite to the Moon down here in Aquarius. So it literally creates a sort of opposition in the chart where they're on each sort of different ends or opposite ends of the chart, and that's the opposition. So the aspectarian is a quick way just to identify what aspects each of the planets has. The other aspects listed are things like the square. So for example, Mercury here is listed as being square to Jupiter. So a square literally just looks like a square. And in the chart itself, we can see Jupiter here at 13 Scorpio, and it's square sort of widely to Mercury at 23 degrees of Leo. So other aspects are the trine, the sextile, and there's also conjunctions, and there's also one of the problems with the aspectarian that Astro.com does by default is it also includes minor aspects that are less important. So it includes things like the quintile, the semisextile, the inconjunct, and other things like that, which even if you use those as a new person to astrology, makes things a little bit unnecessarily complicated. So for our purposes, if you're a beginner, I would recommend just focusing on the red and blue aspects, which are the major aspects or the most significant or important ones. So those are things like the trines, the oppositions, and the squares. All right, so that's the aspectarian, and it's pretty cool because it can sort of tell you at a glance what planets are in aspect to what. Let's see, other parts of the chart. So another major factor in the chart, there's two other major factors. There's one nice, easy little quick reference box, or there's one additional reference box I should mention before we go forward though, and that's this little box right here. So what this does is it gives you two pieces of information. It tells you what the elemental makeup is in your chart in terms of which planets are placed in either fire signs, air signs, earth signs, or water signs, and it nicely kind of color codes them, which is kind of useful. So if you look at the first horizontal sort of axis, it tells you that the following planets are all in fire signs, and it puts those planets in red. So it tells us that Chiron, the Sun, Mercury, and the North Node are all in fire signs, and fire signs have a particular interpretation in terms of delineating what those actually mean. Then it tells you that the following planets are all in air signs, which are the Moon and Mars, which are both in Aquarius. Next, it tells us that all of these planets are in earth signs, and that includes Saturn and Pluto, which are both in Capricorn, which is a green earth sign, as well as Uranus, which is over here in Taurus, which is an earth sign, and Venus and the midheaven, which are in Virgo, which is another earth sign. So one of the things you'll learn pretty early on is that generally speaking, the elements are color coded. So in Astro.com, it codes the earth signs as green. It codes the fire signs as red. It codes the water signs as blue. And then it codes the air signs as kind of like orange or yellow. So all of that information, you can see that visually if you just look at the chart. If you know what signs are associated with what element, you know that if you look at the chart and you see that, for example, that Venus is in a green sign, you know that Venus is going to be in an earth sign. Or if you see that Jupiter is in a blue sign, you know that that means Jupiter's in a water sign. But another quick way for you to find that information out is just by looking at that little box to the left that tells you the elemental placements of each of the planets, which is pretty handy. So let's see, besides that, the box also tells you about the modalities and what modalities each of the planets are placed in. So these are additional properties of the signs, where each of the signs of the zodiac, there's only 12 signs of the zodiac, and each of them falls into one of three categories, which is either cardinal, fixed, or mutable. So this other sort of, layer or line basically just tells you which planets are in cardinal signs, which planets are in fixed signs, and which planets are in mutable signs, which is useful once you, again, just like with the elements, once you learn the elements, once you learn the modalities and what they mean, this becomes like a useful reference point in terms of interpreting different parts of your chart quickly and easily. And generally speaking, this box is useful because it can tell you quickly when there's a preponderance of planets in a certain quality in the chart. So for example, we noticed that this person has a lot of has a lot of earth placements in green, as well as that seems to be the sort of element that the person has the most placements in is earth signs. The person also has a lot of placements in fixed signs. So we would say that the fixed quality is one of the predominant qualities in this person's birth chart or in their life in general. So you can use this little box in the middle left part of the chart basically in order to just quickly get a snapshot of some of the dominant themes in the person's life. All right, finally, one of the last boxes I should mention is this one up here that lists each of the planets. And one of the things that's useful about it is it writes out the name of the planet and it puts the glyph or the symbol for the planet right next to it on the left. So it lists the symbol for the planet, then it gives the name. This is useful because if you don't know the symbols for the planets yet, you can actually use this in order to memorize them. So you can look at, for example, Mars. You see the symbol for Mars, and then you see the name for Mars, and that can help you to memorize those symbols. So obviously, when you look at the chart over on the right, you see the symbol for Venus, but you may not recognize it yet. But if you just look over on the left, you'll see this really useful key that tells you that that's the symbol for Venus. So that's kind of handy if you're new. The other thing that this table is useful for is it tells you the degree that the planet is located in, the sign that it's located in, and then the basically the minutes and seconds, which are subdivisions of the individual degrees of the signs of the zodiac. So for our purposes, the only thing that's really important is just the first two pieces of information, which is that it lists the degree and the sign. So it tells you that the sun is at 4 degrees of Leo, which visually we can see over here when we look and we see that the sun is at 4 degrees in the sign of Leo. So it's just presenting the same information that's over on the right in the actual diagram, but it's writing it out in words and numbers instead of just using, glyphs or symbols, which again is just useful in terms of if you're still a beginner and you're still learning this stuff. So the only other thing that's useful there that I should mention is that it will also tell you in this box if the planet is retrograde. So if there's an R just after the number entry, that means that the planet is retrograde, and so instead of moving forward through the signs of the zodiac, it's temporarily moving backwards through the signs of the zodiac at that point in time. And there's a specific or unique interpretation that goes along with retrograde planets, which you'll learn eventually at some point. So this is also listed in the actual diagram itself. So for example, here we can see that Saturn is listed as being retrograde. And if you look at the actual chart, you'll see Saturn there. It's listed as being in 3 degrees of Capricorn, but there's also a little R next to the glyph for Saturn, which indicates that it's retrograde. So anytime you see a little R next to a planet, that indicates retrograde. So Pluto's retrograde, Mars is retrograde, Neptune is retrograde. It looks like Chiron is retrograde, and Mercury is retrograde, and that's it. The other planets that don't have an R next to them, like Jupiter, are not retrograde. So that's another useful piece of information that the chart gives you. Finally, the very last thing that the chart also displays is the houses, or the 12 houses. And the starting point for this is the horizontal axis that's presented in the middle of the chart. And this is what's known as the ascendant-descendant axis. So the ascendant is over on the left side of the chart, the left side of the circle, and it's just listed as AC. So it says the AC, or the ascendant, is in the sign of Scorpio, and it's at 23 degrees of that sign. So that means that this person's ascendant is in Scorpio. And what the ascendant is it's the sign of the zodiac that was rising over the eastern horizon at the moment that the person was born. So when you're trying to understand the ascendant, think of the ascendant as, remember that in the morning, every morning, the sun rises over the eastern horizon. And that's when it goes from nighttime to daytime, is when the sun basically rises each morning over the horizon. Well, that area of the horizon where the sun rises, that's actually the ascendant. And in this chart, I cast the chart for 3:07 p.m., so it's kind of later in the afternoon today. So the sun was all the way up here, but the sun earlier this morning at like 5 or 6 o'clock this morning, it would have rose over the ascendant, over the horizon, until it eventually got to the point that it's at today. So the point here is just that the ascendant is the spot where the sun rises each morning, but the sun isn't the only planet that rises over the eastern horizon. But in fact, at any one moment in time, there's going to be other planets and other signs of the zodiac that are rising over the horizon at that specific point in time, and that's what the ascendant indicates, or that's what it refers to, and that's what it depicts in the chart, is it tells you exactly which sign of the zodiac was rising over the eastern horizon at the time that you cast the chart for. So if this is a birth chart, and this is the chart for when a person was born, then we would say that their ascendant is in Scorpio, because Scorpio was the sign of the zodiac that was rising over the horizon at the moment of their birth. So the rising sign and the ascendant, the actual degree of the ascendant, which is 23 degrees, is important because that's usually used to set up a series of 12 houses, which are sectors of the chart, where it divides the chart into 12 additional sectors. And each of these sectors is designated in the very innermost wheel, where you'll see 12 numbers. And the sector that is usually associated with the ascendant, or follows immediately after the ascendant, is referred to as the first house. So the very first sector that follows after the ascendant, this entire sector here, is the first house, and it's designated by the number 1. Then after that, we have the second house, which is designated by the number 2. Then we have the third house. Then we have the fourth house, and so on and so forth, until you go all the way around the chart, and eventually you have 12 houses. So each house ends up representing a different part of the person's life and a different topic in the person's life. And in some instances, it can indicate different people in the life. So for example, the second house is associated with finances. So the second house is associated with money and finances, and that's where astrologers would look for financial questions. The seventh house, which is over here, is associated with relationships. So this is where an astrologer would look for the topic of relationships. The 10th house in the midheaven is associated with career. So that's where an astrologer would look to study matters pertaining to a person's career, and so on and so forth. So the houses actually become incredibly important in terms of doing predictions and delineations for different areas of a person's life. So it's important to be able to identify them early on when you start studying astrology and when you learn how to calculate a birth chart. Finally, the only other thing that's worth mentioning here is the very last box that I haven't mentioned. This is just a little box that lists the degrees for the ascendant, the midheaven, the starting point or the cusp of the second house, the third house, the 11th house, and the 12th house. So this is basically just a box that lists the starting point for some of the houses, just in case you weren't able to read that information in the chart itself. So for example, we know from the diagram itself that the ascendant is at 23 degrees of Scorpio, and over here in this box it tells us that the ascendant is at 23 degrees of Scorpio. Or conversely, that we can see that the midheaven, which is the starting point of the 10th house when you're using the default method of house division on astro.com, the midheaven's at 5 degrees of Virgo, and the little box tells us that the midheaven's at 5 degrees of Virgo as well. So it basically just reiterates the same information that's already over here in the chart itself. All right, I'm trying to think if there's anything else, but I think that's it in terms of just a basic overview of the birth chart and what we're looking at here when you get a copy of your birth chart from astro.com, and in terms of what it indicates. So that's the basic starting point or the basic building block to learning astrology and getting into this subject more broadly, because the birth chart is just where everything else comes from. Basically, you have to learn how to read charts before you can learn how to interpret them, and before you can learn how to make predictions or other things using astrology. You first have to understand the basic signs and symbols, and that's probably, if you're brand new to astrology, going to be your first starting point, is just learning how to memorize the symbols for the planets, the symbols for the signs of the zodiac, and then the symbols for the aspects, which are, again, the relationships between the planets. And once you get that basic information down, you should be in pretty good shape to start learning how to actually interpret what each of those placements mean in the birth chart. And from there, eventually, you'll be hopefully really good at doing it, and you'll become a pro astrologer yourself at some point one of these days. All right, so that's it for this quick little introductory overview of how to read your birth chart and what the different components of the birth chart mean. So thanks a lot for watching. If you have any questions, please post them in the comments section below. Please be sure to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you want to see more videos like this. And I'm always looking for suggestions about what video I should do next, just based on what kind of questions people are actually asking. So if you have a question, or if there's a certain type of video that you'd like to see me do next, then shoot me an email or drop me a note in the comments section below to let me know. All right, thanks a lot for watching, and I'll see you next time.
Wouldn't it be great to be able to look at any birth chart, whether yours or someone else's, and quickly see what the most important components of the personality and overall life experiences are? Here's how. First, you will need a birth chart. Let's use yours as an example. If you don't have it available, you can use my simple and easy to use birth chart calculator here. Keep in mind this calculator uses the actual size and location of the constellations, called sidereal astrology, so you might notice some of your signs are different. For more information on sidereal, watch this quick video explaining it in detail. Now, let's get started. There are three main components of any astrological chart: the houses, signs, and planets. The houses represent the sky at the time of your birth, more specifically the ecliptic, which is the path the planets move across in the sky. The houses form the skeletal structure of the chart and are always in the same location for everyone. In a Western chart, like the one we're using today, the leftmost part of the chart represents the eastern horizon, also known as what's rising or the ascendant. This is the beginning of the chart, and the houses start here, beginning with the first house, moving counterclockwise through the 12th. Note that there are different house systems used by astrologers. So the ascendant might be somewhere in the first house, or you might notice the houses aren't divided up equally in other charts. The system we are using today and what my calculator uses is called the equal house system, which divides up the ecliptic into 12 equal segments starting from the ascendant. Feel free to use whichever system you prefer. Directly opposite the ascendant is the descendant, which, as you might guess, is the western horizon or what's setting. The top of the chart represents the highest part of the ecliptic in the sky, and the bottom, what's underneath the horizon or the non-visible sky. So, what do these houses mean in the chart? An easy way of thinking about this is since the houses represent the areas of the sky, in astrology, the houses represent the areas of life, starting with the first house, which represents all areas of life having to do with the self, such as self-image, motivations, our goals, our physical body, appearance, etc. The second having to do with our values, and so on. The houses represent what we might call areas of life. The next component of the natal chart is the signs. The signs represent where along the ecliptic the zodiac signs were at the time of your birth. What sign was rising? Which setting? This is where individual interpretations can begin now that we have two components of the chart to compare. It can be said the signs show the characteristics of the sky at the time of your birth. So an easy way of remembering what they represent is thinking of them as the characteristics of life. From the directness of Aries to the receptiveness of Pisces, the zodiac signs show the qualities that come through our life. The last component, the planets, represent the experiences in our life. These transient bodies in the sky mirror our transient experiences here on Earth. As they always do, these experiences further shape our personality. What house a planet is in shows us in which area these experiences of life occur. What sign, which characteristics these experiences are made up of. In terms of our personality, the houses show which areas of life are major areas for us. The signs, which characteristics are prominent in our personality. The easiest way to think about planets are as the experiences of life which shape our personality. Now let's look at what your chart says about you. In general birth chart analysis, we want to start with the most foundational elements first. In other words, the most foundational elements of your personality and overall life experiences. There are four main components of the chart that show this: your sun, moon, ascendant, and the ascendant's ruler, also known as your chart ruler. Essentially, we are looking for the house and sign position of these 4 components, except for the ascendant, which only shows the sign, but we'll get to this later. Let's start with your sun and moon. These 2 elements represent the most fundamental and essential yin and yang elements of the self. The sun represents your outwardly focused, expressive, and masculine side, while the moon your inwardly focused, reflective, and feminine side. Together, these planets make up the bulk of your inner and outer personality, along with the types of continued experiences that influence them. Identify the sun and moon in your chart. They are represented by these symbols here. Once you've identified both your sun's house and sign placement and your moon's house and sign placement, use these PDFs to uncover what these fundamental elements of your personality are all about. Remember that the house placements show the areas of life that are important to you and are major themes in your life. The sign shows the characteristics that come through your personality and life experiences. Your sun representing your outward self and moon inward. Now let's look at your ascendant and chart ruler. These elements essentially represent how your life unfolds and what shapes your personality over time. They are like your sun and moon, except more specifically the life path and life events which further shape your personality. You might think of this as who you are becoming and strongly representing you and your life in the chart. Your ascendant represents the qualities that you are developing as a result of your life experiences. There is only a sign associated with it because it is always associated with the first house. Your chart ruler, on the other hand, is essentially the planet that rules the sign your ascendant is in. The house and sign position the chart ruler is placed in represents a more detailed look at not only what characteristics you are developing, but the area of life as well. First, let's identify your ascendant sign. Look up the characteristics of this sign using the same PDF we used earlier. Remember, these are the qualities that come through your overall life experiences and shape who you are becoming. These are very important qualities to develop in your life. Now let's identify your chart ruler. First, you must know what planet rules the sign your ascendant is in. Use this PDF here to get a list of rulers for each of the zodiac signs. You might notice you have 2. In this case, mark both planets, as they'll be equally as important. Once you have identified your chart ruler, locate its house and sign placement just like you did for the sun and moon. Use the same PDFs we used earlier to identify what these areas of life and characteristics are that shape your personality over time. Remember, the chart ruler essentially represents you in the chart and what is being developed. At this point in your analysis, you've uncovered the 4 most fundamental elements of the natal chart. Analyzing and understanding these 4 components alone will account for a huge understanding of who you are and your prominent life experiences. You can apply this same process to any person's chart. For those of you who want to take the analysis further, you'll want to look at the major associations that form between these 4 components and other planets in the birth chart. These are called aspects. The aspects can either be found on the inside of the chart, next to the chart, or both. Here's a PDF of what the different aspects mean for your further analysis. Next, you can look at the inner planets of Mercury, Venus, and Mars. Then the middle planets, Jupiter and Saturn, followed by the outer planets of Uranus and Neptune, and the comets, Chiron and Pluto, analyzing their house and sign placements. Note that as you move further out to the more distant planets, the personality characteristics become that much deeper and less apparent. Much like an onion, where the outer layer of our personality and experiences represent the 4 main components we uncovered in this video, followed by the inner planets, middle, then outer in the center of the onion. As a side note, pay particular attention to any planets in the first house, as they will tend to come through strongly in the personality and experiences. Here is a list of the major planets. It shows what elements of the self and experiences in life they represent. With continued practice, focusing primarily on the 4 major components of the birth chart outlined in this video, you'll be able to interpret a birth chart quickly and precisely in a matter of minutes.